Hello, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to WinField United's webinar, Unlocking Glufosinate's Full Potential with the Right Adjuvants. We'll get started here shortly.
At WinField United, we believe innovation is central to retail success. Success starts with developing and testing products and agronomic practices that provide critical data and insights, putting retail sellers in a position to deliver some of the best recommendations and ROI to their growers. It all starts at the Innovation Center with labs, greenhouses, and cutting-edge technology all under one roof to streamline product and service development. By integrating research and testing, insights are realized faster here, so retailers and basic manufacturing partners can quickly realize the impact in the field. To ensure it's ready for the field, we put it to the test in answer plot trials. The answer plot program provides valuable local insights for every acre in every condition. Answer plot operations is the hub that enables performance data to be generated and collected with painstaking detail from answer plot locations across 20 states. Collecting all the right information takes the guesswork out of what genetics, traits, and management practices perform best in a particular field. So managing a full season from planting to harvest can be done with confidence. How all this comes together is a true advantage. By processing millions of data points annually and more efficiently than ever before to provide a consistent stream of products, services, and agronomic expertise, that enables retail sellers to deliver data-driven, actionable insights and stronger recommendations to their growers today and lays the groundwork to solve even bigger challenges tomorrow.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning, first thing in the morning, the week before probably the biggest holiday week of the season. So thank you. We've got some important information to share with you, and now is the right time to do it. So thanks very much for joining us this morning. My name is Joe Valancourt. I'm the Strategic Marketing Manager for Adjuvants here at WinField United, and I'm joined by Tim Abbey. He's a Market Development Agronomist up in Wisconsin, and we're excited to share with you today just the glufosinate landscape and how WinField United adjuvants play a role there. Not just around Liberty Ultra, but all the glufosinates available. So what we'll take away today, what's different about this new Liberty formulation that's new for 2025? What is that best adjuvant package pair up for glufosinate? And then how do adjuvants affect the performance of glufosinate? We're looking to get through those three topics here in the next 30 minutes. We do offer CCA credit for this webinar. It's getting approved today. So we usually have a QR code that just scanned at the end of this. This time we're going to follow up with you with an email and follow the directions on that email to get the CCA credits that are assigned to this particular webinar. So again, we will follow up, use that information. That will have the directions to get the credit for this one. So let's jump right into it with a poll question here. We are curious to know, which crop protection products do you expect to pair up with adjuvants this year? Select all of these that apply. Enlist or the other 2,4-D herbicides, Liberty brands or other glufosinate herbicides, any other post herbicides there. You're applying adjuvants with pre's, with fungicides, insecticides, crop nutrition, micronutrients, PGRs, or bios. Anyone doing adjuvants in that bio space? Curious to know there. All right. Wow. Surprise, surprise. Looks like the highest answer was Liberty, actually, and glufosinate. A lot of you expect to. And Enlist too. And of course, we're going to see a lot of those tank mixes out in the field. So what you hear here today is going to be applicable too for those Enlist tank mixes. One more poll question before we dive into the content here. What benefits are you looking for when you select adjuvants to pair up with crop protection products? Select all that apply here. Let's try to stick to the top, maybe 2 or 3. Is it improved efficacy? Is it that drift control, crop safety, product quality, grower satisfaction? Is it the price and value, the ease of use, mixability, consistency in performance and reliability, the reputation? Or is it the availability there? Give us maybe, like I said, top 2 or 3. Interested to know how you're viewing here. Improved efficacy and performance. Again, pretty good. That's nice to know. We do have our innovation center out in River Falls, Wisconsin, that certainly helps us validate and prove the performance of our adjuvant system. So that is primarily what we're here to go over. So Tim, let's get right into it. These key takeaways that I'm hoping that you go away with today is that for all of these glufosinate formulations that exist for the 2025 season, there is one WinField United adjuvant recommendation to rule them all, and that is Class Act NG and Interlock. So for all of the news around new glufosinate formulations, new entrants to the market, we're saying, hey, go out there with the same adjuvant pair up that you've been recommending over the last 15 plus years. Class Act NG with the water conditioner with AMS and high load of surfactant, and then getting that material to the plant and adhering to the plant with Interlock. Liberty Ultra is that new branded glufosinate here this year from BASF. It is a concentrated material that Tim will provide a more detailed overview. There's an inert package in that formulation, just like there's an inert package in Liberty 280. And all the same, they need additional adjuvants to really optimize performance. Again, we'll go over that. We've got some brand new Liberty Ultra data. I have reason to believe that no one else has run any sort of wind tunnel data with Liberty Ultra yet, at least on the commercial side. So very excited to show you what we've learned about Liberty Ultra from our friends at BASF. Lastly, Liberty Ultra is subject to new mandates by the EPA regarding the Endangered Species Act, and there are some drift mitigation mandates for certain areas if you're applying in an area deemed a habitat from one of 900 some endangered species. So we will cover that at the very end here. So like I said, there's a lot of glufosinate formulations out there, whether you're going with new branded, that high surfactant load branded, a high surfactant load of generic, a low surfactant load of generic, or just the straight goods, nothing loaded in there. You will certainly want an adjuvant system to help optimize performance in that case. But let's start with the one we all know quite well from the past 20 years, Interlock. Delivers that drift control, consistent performance. The deposition piece is what I don't think we talk about enough. Yes, this reduces drift, but it's also adhering that material to the plant, which is equally as important. We need to get it there, and then we need to keep it there. And then Class Act, of course, our combination 34% AMS product, and that's got 2 quarts of AMS per 2.5 gallon jug. Now,
2 quarts of non-ionic surfactant.
Thank you very much, Tim. I certainly don't want to lie to everyone here. 2 quarts of non-ionic surfactant in every 2.5 gallon jug, and it's that highest load that we can get in a liquid, 34% AMS as well. So that AMS is going to condition the water and certainly activate that glufosinate. It's also going to improve uptake with our corn sorb humectant technology. That is a corn syrup surfactant combination, really resists dry off of that material, so more can get absorbed into the leaf, and we've proven that 7 ways to Sunday. And then Class Act NG, because all formulations can benefit from additional surfactant here, okay? So Tim, Liberty Ultra, can you give us an overview? What's different about this formulation?
Yeah, so it's a new resolved isomeric mixture. So the conventional glufosinate is what's called a racemic mixture. So 50% of the more active isomer, that means the product has a stereoisomer. So 50% of the more active isomer and 50% of the less active isomer. So through a fairly arduous process, they isolated that more active isomer and produced a product that has a higher concentration of the more active isomer. So this is not new technology. It is new to Liberty, but everyone's probably familiar with dual versus dual 2 Magnum. It's the same thing. The dual 2 Magnum is the resolved mixture of that active ingredient, and then the newer Outlook, also from BASF, is a resolved mixture of dimethylamide as well. So again, not new technology, but it is new to Liberty, and it's a difficult thing to do. So if you wonder, well, why haven't we had this until now? It's a hard thing to separate those two isomers and make these products. So as far as the mode of action and how it's killing the weeds, that's still the same. So plants don't take in nitrogen as ammonia, and they don't use it as ammonia, but ammonia is one of the steps in the nitrogen metabolism process. So we convert glutamate and ammonia to glutamine, which is an amino acid. And what glufosinate does is it blocks that from happening. So it blocks that reaction or blocks that conversion. So then the ammonia starts building up in the plant, and ammonia is actually toxic to pretty much every living thing. So as that ammonia builds up in the plant, it eventually poisons it. So that mode of action is unchanged regardless of whether you're using the old Liberty, the new Liberty, or Total, or any other form of glufosinate. And another thing to note too is that nitrogen metabolism is more intense during periods of sunlight uptake or high sunlight uptake. So that's why there's that recommendation around Liberty that it's best to apply it during periods of heavier sunlight. So avoiding, dusk and dawn where you're not getting very intense sunlight uptake, because nitrogen metabolism is less. So then the herbicide's opportunity to act on that pathway is reduced in those situations as well. Next one. So nevertheless, even with the resolved isomeric mixture, our adjuvant recommendation, as you mentioned just a little bit ago, is still the same. So the biggest benefit, I guess, out of that new mixture is a reduced use rate. So from a logistic standpoint, you can use about 2/3 of what you would have had to use of the old product, and hopefully you still get higher uptake because, again, it's a resolved isomeric mixture. So, but from adjuvants, we still want the same stuff. We still want the class act in there. Like you mentioned, it has 2 quarts of non-ionic surfactant. So far, we have not come across a product in the industry that has a heavier load of surfactants than Class Act. So in its current state, we can't add anything more to it. So you can only suspend so much stuff in a gallon of water, and so we can't add anything else to that without either taking something out or coming up with a new way to formulate it. So sometimes we'll get questions, why don't you just add the interlock right to it, and then we don't have to add that separately. And that's the reason why, is we can't add something without taking something out. But then, you see, like you kind of went through already with interlock, that's in there primarily for drift and deposition. So just to eliminate those super fine droplets that come out of the spray nozzle and evaporate and never make it to their target. Next one. So this is an interlock study that we did, I believe in 2024. So this past summer in the PhenoSpecs machine, or with the PhenoSpecs lab, sorry. Maybe you've heard about this, maybe you haven't, but this is the only machine of its kind in the US. I believe that's still the case. There's 1 or 2 over in Europe somewhere, but this is the only one in the US. So basically what we did here is they sprayed these plants in the wind tunnel. A sprayer boom passed over them, and it's actually a section of a John Deere sprayer boom. So it's the same nozzle setup that you would use in the field. That passes over these plants in the wind tunnel, and we have, I'm sure they had a slight breeze to try and simulate a true out of lab application or in-field application. That boom passes over, sprays them. Then we take the plants out of the wind tunnel, put them in the PhenoSpecs lab where they're sitting on individual scales, plus the machine scans overhead once an hour. In total, it takes 21 different measurements to tell us what's happening. So if you scan this QR code up in the right-hand corner, a link will pop up. You click on that link and you can get a 3D image of this that shows you some of the really cool information we can generate from that lab. It's not just for cool visuals. Obviously, we're also using it to take valuable measurements, but that just demonstrates some of the information that machine can collect. So hopefully, like I said, scan that QR code and bring that up. You can skip. Hopefully they got it, but
Alrighty.
So this is getting into Liberty now. So Liberty with Class Act. The age-old question is, do I really need Class Act, or can I just run dry AMS? And this is some data that's fairly old. Back in 2004 at North Dakota States, they ran Class Act versus AMS at 3 pounds. So the heavier rate of AMS, and the Class Act at 2.5% volume for volume would only deliver 1.5 pounds, but we also have surfactant and corn sorb in there as well. So our highest levels of control were when we had Class Act in the tank. So, and also, Joe, if you click on this, that shows
You know
if
what,
it'll
Tim?
work.
For some reason it's not going. It essentially visualizes the graph that you're seeing on the left
Yeah.
there, the chart that you're seeing on the left. Just showing the advantage of Class Act over AMS alone. Of course, we need to get AMS in that tank. We can provide this video back out. It
Yeah.
is available on YouTube, but you're just seeing a complete kill with that Class Act NG at the full rate. Getting the advantage out of the corn sorb, of course, and the non-ionic surfactant in there.
And the
Sorry
video's
about that.
been out for a while too, so maybe most of you have seen it. But just as a little note too, like you may look at those graphs and see, well, how did you go from 90 to 78% control, from 14 to 28 days? And for one thing, this was done by an outside source. This was done at North Dakota State. So I'm assuming that their 98 or 90% at 14 days was suspected control, and then after 28 days, some of those weeds actually came back to life. So that would be my guess. But again, that was done over 20 years ago. So can't really go back and ask, but next slide here. So there's only one Class Act. What's in it? Like we already went through, a heavy load of AMS, 2 quarts of surfactant, and then corn sorb. There's also a high quality defoamer to try and eliminate foaming. So Liberty and the Liberty Ultra do have a defoamer in it, but even when those are, even with those in there, you can still have problems with foaming. So anytime you have AMS in the tank, that can be an issue. So we have a defoamer to help combat that. So next one. So now we're getting into the Liberty Ultra versus Liberty 280 performance. Now, this is not performance in the plant. This is just once it comes out of the droplet, how is it going to behave? So this is just Liberty 280 versus Liberty Ultra, no adjuvant. So you can see your percentage of driftable fines produced is right around 8%. So pretty much the same thing there. Median droplet size is the same and relative span is the same. So relative span is just the range of droplets. So you want a small number there because, if you have a large relative span, that means you're producing a lot of really big droplets and a lot of really small droplets. And when you average them together, maybe you have a good size, but you're still producing a lot of smalls and a lot of bigs. So next one.
And this is the data that I was referring to, that it doesn't get much hotter off the press than this. Thanks to our legal team for pushing this through so we could share it today. As far as wind tunnel performance, we're not seeing a whole lot of difference here. Lends us to believe we need to get that same recommendation. We are working on data in the phenotype lab as well to generate some imagery and data that Tim just shared a couple slides ago. But our first look here says that nothing else in the tank. Liberty 280 and Liberty Ultra are performing pretty similarly when it comes to those wind tunnel aspects. Driftable fines, the average size of the droplet, and what that span is, your smallest droplet to your largest droplet.
And again, like I said, this is just once it comes out of the nozzle. This is not in-plant efficacy numbers. So, and this just demonstrates basically the same thing. So our volume of driftable fines when we have Liberty alone on the left, then added Class Act NG doesn't have really an effect on reducing driftable fines when we add Class Act. So that effect doesn't really happen until we put interlock in the tank, and that's your third bar there. So that just shows why we really need that interlock. And then once we add Enlist and some of these other herbicides to the tank, we can really reduce drift even further. And that would be the total amount of drift. So that would be Liberty and the other herbicides that are in the tank. And Enlist does have, I believe it has a drift component in it. You can see we still benefit from adding interlock, but nevertheless, when we're spraying Liberty along with our partner herbicides, we can really reduce drift to almost less than 2% or less than 2% in some cases. So next one.
And that performance again that you expect with Liberty 280 when it comes to the Class Act NG and interlock tank mix, you can expect nearly the very similar performance in Liberty Ultra as you can with 280. I mean, we are seeing stepwise performance here. And we did replicate these 5 times, but a great point by Tim here. Even as we add in Enlist 1, excuse me, in Roundup Power Max 3 for some of those common tank mixes, we're seeing that similar performance. If you wanted to put a strike lock material in with your Enlist 1 here, that would be on label with Enlist. Very similar sort of performance here. We could talk a little bit about the other lock brands here at the end as well. So Tim, we've got about 8 minutes here.
Yeah, so let's skip ahead this one. This is the same data, just in a different metric. So here, this is, hopefully you've seen this the last year or two. These are uptake studies that we've been doing where we measure, okay, how much herbicide is actually getting into the plant. So we treat a plant with a herbicide mixture, let it sit for 24 hours, because if it hasn't gone in after 24 hours, it's not gonna go in. I mean, the reality is we probably have minutes to get that herbicide in there, not hours and certainly not days. So, and then we wash it with what's called an extractant, and that pulls that herbicide that's still on the leaf surface back off. And then we measure, okay, how much should we pull back off to figure out, okay, what was our uptake? So next one. This should be just Liberty. So if you look at when we sprayed Liberty just by itself, 91% of the herbicide was still on the leaf surface, which means we got about 8.7% uptake. When we added both AMS and 2,4-D, we got to 12.5, and that rate of liquid AMS is equivalent to 300. It's not equivalent. It does deliver 3 pounds of AMS to the acre. That's per acre. So, and that product is a 3.4 pound of AMS per gallon. So that gives you 3 pounds of actual AMS per acre, and then there's a 1 quart per acre surfactant in there at the preference, from the preference. So then Liberty and Class Act nearly double uptake. So at that 2.5% volume for volume rate. So that's what we're getting out of that heavy load of surfactant in the corn sorb. So really just demonstrates what that Class Act does for us as far as increased uptake. And it also shows how little Liberty actually gets into the plant. And remember, this is in a lab setting. So we're dropping the droplets right on the leaves. There's no risk for drift and deposition in a lab. So in an actual infield application, these numbers are certainly lower, maybe 50 to 60% of this. So it really shows you why we need these adjuvants to get as much herbicide into the plant as we possibly can. Next one. So that brings us to our third poll question, and that is what percentage of your, and actually I think Joe was supposed to read this, so sorry I goofed up there, but
you're doing great, Tim. Keep going. Yeah.
What percentage of your glufosinate applications will also include another herbicide in the tank? So 0 to 25% will have a partner herbicide, 25 to 50%, 50 to 75%, or 75% or more will have another herbicide in the tank. Yeah, that's pretty much what I figured. The majority of them will have another herbicide in with them. So, so that brings us to our next slide that really outlines the need for adjuvants, not only to help the Liberty, but also to help the Enlist. So this is measuring Enlist uptake when we have Liberty in the tank. So not Liberty, just Enlist. So you can see there, we had about 22% Enlist uptake with just Liberty by itself. If we add Strike Lock, because we don't always necessarily need an oil adjuvant for Liberty if you're in hard to kill conditions where it's hot and dry, because Liberty likes hot and humid and those leaves have hardened off, then you may benefit from Strike Lock even with the Liberty, but we really need that oil in there to help the Enlist or Section if you're spraying Section as well. So, but when we combine Enlist plus Liberty plus Class Act, we get our highest uptake there of 65% Enlist. So it isn't just about the Liberty, it's also about the partner herbicides that are in there that are helping us to either give us an additional mode of action on water hemp or kill volunteer corn or whatever we're trying to do with them. Next one here. So just that kind of leads me into just a real quick talk about resistance. So one thing to understand about herbicide resistance is it happens before you ever treat the weed with the herbicide. So the misconception is that, we spray it with a herbicide and that plant just sort of figures out how to metabolize that plant or herbicide, and that's not true. That actually happens before we ever treat the herbicide. And when you think, that maybe seems kind of odd that it can occur that way, but when we think that, there's billions of water hemp plants growing across just the US every year, it's not so hard to believe that it only takes one mutation in one plant to occur to impart resistance. So, somewhere along the line years ago, a sprayer pulled into the field to spray a field that had water hemp in it with Roundup, and there was one plant hiding in that field with Roundup resistance, and every plant other than that one probably died, but that one Roundup plant survived throughout likely hundreds of thousands of seeds, and even if 1% of those survive, we're talking about tens of thousands of new resistant plants, and that shows you how that happens and how quickly that can happen. Now, however, though, if that application had been made with two modes of action, if they had the ability to do that, that Roundup resistant plant would have been extinguished, and Roundup resistance in that case would have been extinguished. Now, I'm not saying it still wouldn't have happened later on, but I'm just trying to stress the need for multiple modes of action, because if we're just relying solely on Liberty and we lose Liberty, that will happen eventually. That mutation that results in resistance will happen, and then we'll have Liberty resistance, and we won't be able to use Liberty. So make sure you're using multiple modes of action and you're using an adjuvant package that gives you the best possible performance with both of those modes of action. So this is some field trials we did with Liberty Ultra versus Liberty 280 SL, and there will certainly be more of this to come as we get more product to test over the next coming years. So, this is what they look like versus each other with no adjuvants. Next one here.
I've said it only 20 times today. Very similar performance, when it comes to the unaided chemistry there.
Yeah, and remember, you're using a reduced rate, so that's 24 ounces versus 32 ounces. So we're not trying to bash Liberty by any means. And like I said too, we'll have more research done on this in the coming years, so there'll be more data to share and how they work not only outside of the nozzle but inside the plant. So this is once we add Class Act. These visuals sometimes can be a little tricky to see the.
Yep, this is the 280, just cleaning up a little bit more grass there. And then here's the Ultra again.
So yeah, you can see, and that's a fairly low rate of Class Act, 1.25% volume for volume. So if you're running that in the field, not every state can run that, and still qualify for their warranty, but you would also want to supplement in some additional AMS to get to that 1.5 pounds of actual AMS per acre. So, but there again, we're just trying to demonstrate the effects you get when you add Class Act at the rate that's probably a more common rate that growers and applicators are using.
Thanks, Tim. I will wrap it up here quickly with the Endangered Species Act and how that kind of ties into Liberty Ultra specifically. Liberty Ultra is the first label to take on this kind of language and these type of mandates from EPA. So there are some new requirements for these areas deemed habitats for endangered species. I got a screenshot over here. This is not the full map. This is just an example of the swath of land that this is covering. So, you know, if you're in Tim's neck of the woods there, if you're in Illinois, Indiana, where I'm originally from in Michigan, certainly this would pertain to you. But we need to mitigate runoff and drift. Those are the two things EPA wants us to do. We can't really do anything about the runoff situation. You'll see in the label there how to manage that. Some of that is you'd already be taken care of if you're in relatively flat and ungraded land. But as far as the drift portion, EPA does not want any herbicide, starting with Liberty Ultra here, to drift if it's in one of these areas. The qualified drift reduction adjuvants as it pertains to the Endangered Species Act are oil emulsion adjuvants. That would be Interlock, Strike Lock, Master Lock, Ultralock, Power Lock, AccuDrop, Downdraft from WinField United. Your oil emulsion, the dicamba stuff, forget about that. The dicamba stuff is not qualified at this time. So those long chain polymers, those thickeners, those do not qualify as a drift mitigation or a DRA as it pertains to the Endangered Species Act on Liberty Ultra. So play it safe out there. If you are in an area where you're applying Liberty Ultra and you are subject to these mandates, get a lock brand in the tank and just play it safe. That is the best way to handle it. If you did want to get AccuDrop or Downdraft, of course that would work just fine, and you would reduce that buffer from 10 feet down to 0 feet in these instances. So if you have any questions about this, reach out to your WinField United rep. We're working with trade organizations, so we're all kind of singing from the same songbook here, as this is a government and regulatory issue, really more than anything else. So if you're subject to these mandates, get a lock brand in the tank with your Liberty Ultra and play it safe there.
We had one question I want to answer real quick before we run out of time. So somebody asked, can we use UAN in place of AMS, and is it as effective? And the answer is no, you can't, because it's the sulfate portion of the AMS that's actually binding with the hard water cations and conditioning those cations and preventing them from binding with the herbicide. So UAN will do some conditioning. So in some cases you can use it with glyphosate, I think, on their label, some other products too, but a lot of times in those cases it's just for increased uptake. So with AMS, the sulfate binds with the hard water ions, and then the nitrogen, the ammonium, will bind with the herbicide and help bring more herbicide in. And that's the effect you will get with UAN, but you don't get that conditioning of those hard water cations. So good question though.
Thank you very much for your time this morning. Again, if you're looking to get your CCA credits, we're going to send an email that should arrive by the end of tomorrow with instructions on how to get your CCA credit.
And it'll have a QR code, I think. So
for today's
I think they said it'll have a QR code, so you'll just scan it the same way you would with all our webinars. It's just that we didn't have that QR code active in time to have it here. So it still should be pretty easy.
Excellent. Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of the week and a wonderful holiday season.